There's a particular sound a dry ranch makes at night when the money is gone. It isn't silence. Silence would be a mercy. It's the small noises, a windmill that won't pump, a fence wire ticking as it cools, a screen door that never quite latches, all of them saying the same thing in different voices. You can't afford to fix me. I've ranched this valley 41 years. I've buried 3 good dogs, 1 bad marriage, and a son who moved to the city and calls twice a year. I thought I'd seen every way a person could lose a place. I was wrong. Because I never once imagined I'd watch a woman lose everything she owned. And then, on the emptiest night of her life, watch 3 animals that nobody else in the world wanted come walking up her road out of the dark, long-necked and impossible, like the land itself had decided she wasn't finished yet. I'm not going to tell you this story made everything okay. It didn't. Some things stay broken. But if you've ever stood in a kitchen doing math that doesn't work, if you've ever been the thing that got rejected, that got returned, that got called not worth the cost, then I need you to stay with me. Because what happened to Della Ruiz that autumn is the truest thing I know about what it costs to keep going, and about who shows up when you've got nothing left to offer. Stay with me to the end. There's a moment near the last that I still can't talk about without stopping to breathe. I'll get to it. Just stay. The first time I saw them, I thought the drought had finally cooked my brain. It was maybe 4 in the morning, late September, that hour when the dark is thickest and the coffee hasn't happened yet. I was standing on my porch because my hip won't let me sleep past 3 anymore, and I was looking east toward the Ruiz place across the wash the way you look at a house you're worried about. Not for any reason, just checking, the way you check on a sick animal in the night. And I saw shapes on the ridge road. Big shapes, wrong shapes. I've got cattle. I've got mule deer that come through and pronghorn that cut across the flats when the coyotes push them. I know the silhouette of everything that walks in this valley the way you know the faces of your own family. And these were none of them. These were tall. Impossibly, foolishly tall, moving with a slow rolling gait. 3 of them in a line, their necks swinging in that lazy pendulum way that I'd only ever seen on a television screen. And my first clear thought, I'm not proud of it, was that I'd finally had the stroke Doc Ferris kept warning me about. I went inside, I sat down, I drank a full glass of water, I came back out, they were still there, closer now, and that's when I heard Della scream. It wasn't a scream of fear, exactly. I've heard those. This was something rawer, something that came up out of the bottom of a person, half a cry and half a laugh. The sound you make when the thing in front of you is so far outside anything you were prepared for that your body doesn't know which reaction to pick. I grabbed my truck keys, and I didn't even put on a proper shirt, just went in my undershirt and my boots, and I drove the 2 miles of dirt between our places faster than a man my age has any business driving. Now I have to back up, because you don't understand what those animals meant until you understand what Della had already lost. Della Ruiz came to this valley 11 years ago with a husband named Marcus and a plan the size of a cathedral. They bought the old Pettibone spread 400 acres, most of it rock and mesquite and heartbreak, but there was water rights attached and a good barn and a house that had been somebody's dream once. Marcus was one of those men who talked in future tense. Everything was going to be. The place was going to be a cattle operation. Then it was going to be an agritourism thing with cabins. Then it was going to be a horse rescue. Then a lavender farm. God help us, in a county that gets 9 inches of rain in a good year. I liked Marcus fine. Understand that. But he was a man who fell in love with the beginning of things and had no stomach for the middle, and the middle is where ranching lives. The middle is fixing the same fence for the 9th time. The middle is a heifer down at midnight in the freezing rain with her calf turned wrong and your arm in her up to the shoulder, and no money for the vet. Marcus didn't have the middle in him. Della did. That's the thing nobody saw at first because she was quiet and she was small and she let him do the talking. But I watched that woman over the years and I'll tell you, every single thing that place accomplished, she accomplished. She learned to weld off a library book. She learned to pull a calf to shoe in a pinch, to run the numbers on feed so tight she could tell you the price of alfalfa to the penny going back 6 years. Marcus dreamed. Della did. He left 4 years ago. Just left. There'd been trouble, there'd been money going out that shouldn't have, and one spring morning his truck was gone and so was he, and he'd taken enough out of their shared account on the way that Della woke up not just abandoned but robbed. Left her the land, the debt, the animals, and a note I never read but heard about, 4 words on the kitchen table: "I'm not this person." She could have folded then. Everybody expected her to. A woman alone, no capital, a spread that had never once turned a real profit. The whole valley figured she'd sell to the Hutchins outfit that had been circling the water rights like buzzards for a decade, and go be a receptionist in town, and that would be that. She didn't sell. She dug in instead, and for 4 years she fought that land to a standstill with her bare hands and a stubbornness that scared me a little. But you can't outwork a drought. The last 2 summers had been the driest anybody could remember. The wells were dropping. Her cattle numbers had to come down and down and down because she couldn't afford to feed what the ground wouldn't grow, and every animal she sold at a loss was another piece of the thing coming apart. By that September, the September of the Giraffes, Della Ruiz had 11 head of cattle left on 400 acres, a foreclosure notice from the bank taped to her refrigerator, and exactly 31 days before the auction. I know about the 31 days because I'm the one who did her math with her. I'm not going to pretend I was a saint about it. I offered to buy her out myself early on, and she looked at me across her kitchen table with those dark, tired eyes and said, "Cal, if I sell to you, you'll run it right, and every time I drive past I'll see what it should have been. I'd rather it die than watch it live for somebody else." And I understood that. God help me, I understood it completely. It's the most ranch thing anybody ever said to me. That's the woman the Giraffes found. A woman 31 days from zero, who had already decided she'd rather go down with the ship than be saved wrong. When I got to her place that morning, my truck sliding sideways in her yard, Della was standing in the middle of the drive in her nightgown and a pair of unlaced boots, and she was crying and laughing both at once, and 3 giraffes were standing at the edge of her lantern light like something out of a fever. I got out. I didn't say anything smart. What was there to say? "Cal," she said, not looking at me, looking at them. "Cal, am I losing my mind?" "If you are," I said, "we're losing it together because I see 'em too." They were beautiful and they were wrecked. Even in the poor light I could see it. The biggest one, a bull I'd later learn was called Gulliver, had a coat gone patchy across the shoulders and a way of holding one back leg like it hurt him. The middle one was a cow, smaller, watchful, her ears flicking at every sound. She never once stopped scanning the dark the whole time I knew her, like she was waiting for the next bad thing, and I'd come to understand exactly why. And the third one made my chest hurt to look at. A young one, maybe half-grown, with legs too long for its body and a raw patch on its neck where something had rubbed or rope had held, and it kept pressing itself against the cow's flank like it needed to feel her there to believe it was still alive. 3 giraffes, in the high desert, at 4 in the morning, standing in the yard of a woman who couldn't afford to feed the 11 cows she already had. I want to tell you I understood right then that they'd been a gift. I didn't. My first honest thought, and I've never lied in this account so I won't start, my first honest thought was, "Della, these things are going to finish you off." The where did they come from part unraveled over the next 2 days, and it's uglier than the animals deserved. There'd been a place about 90 miles south of us, off the interstate, one of those roadside safari operations. A drive-through zoo kind of thing where you paid $20 and threw pellets at exotic animals out your car window. It had gone under. The economy, the owner's health, some lawsuit, the details got muddy in the retelling, but the short of it is the place closed and the animals got scattered to wherever anybody would take them, and a lot of them didn't get taken anywhere good. These 3 had been the leftovers, the rejects. I learned this from a young woman named Priya who showed up at Della's the second day in a beat-to-hell sedan, having tracked the animals across 3 counties, and who turned out to be the closest thing they had to a friend in the world. Priya had been a keeper at the safari place, low paid, kept on almost to the end, and when the animals were being sold off and shipped out, she'd fought for these 3 because nobody else wanted them. The bull Gulliver was old and lame, and no proper zoo would take an old lame bull. The cow, her name was Juno, was what the trade calls unmanageable, meaning she'd been mistreated somewhere back in her history and didn't trust people and would kick, and a scared giraffe is a dangerous giraffe. And the young one, the calf, was Juno's, born at the failing park, and it had a heart murmur or some defect that made it a poor bet, and the accredited places want good bets. Investments. Not charity cases. So the 3 of them, old, damaged, defective, lame, frightened, sick, had been loaded onto the last transport as a kind of afterthought, headed for a private buyer in another state, which Priya told us with her jaw tight usually meant a can-hunting ranch or worse. And somewhere on the interstate the transport trailer had a mechanical failure, a blowout and a fire in the engine in the dark, in the middle of nowhere, and in the chaos of it the animals had gotten loose. The driver saved himself and the rig and lost the cargo, and by the standards of the people who'd arranged all this, 3 worthless giraffes wandering off into the desert to die of thirst was a solved problem, not a new one. Nobody came looking. That's the part I keep coming back to. Nobody came looking for them because they had already been written off. In every ledger that mattered, they were a loss already taken. They walked. 3 days, Priya figured, from where the trailer burned. 3 days across country that kills things bigger and tougher than giraffes, following the smell of water on the wind, or following nothing, or following whatever it is that keeps a creature moving when giving up would be easier. And they walked out of the dark and up the ridge road, and into the yard of the one person in 100 miles who understood in her bones exactly what it felt like to be the thing nobody wanted to pay to keep. Della understood it before I did. She told me later she knew the second she saw them. They were returned goods, Cal, she said, same as me. Here is where I have to be honest about how ugly the middle of this got, because I promised you the middle and I meant it. A giraffe eats between 15 and 30 pounds of browse a day. 3 of them, one of them growing, is a mountain of food, and it's not hay, it's leaves, branches, the tender growth off trees, and we are in a desert, and it was drought. Della had 11 cattle she couldn't feed, and now she had 3 animals that ate more than all 11 combined and ate things that didn't even grow here. She had a foreclosure in 30 days. She had no fencing that would hold a creature that could step over most of it or reach clean over the top. She had a vet bill coming she couldn't imagine, a cold snap coming that could kill tropical animals, and she had exactly no legal right to any of them and probably a mess of liability if one of them hurt somebody or got out on the county road and a car hit it at 70. Any sane person would have made the calls. Animal control. The state. Somebody with a facility and a truck and the authority to make 3 impossible animals into somebody else's problem. That was the sane move. That was the responsible move. Honestly, these were wild animals, dangerous, sick, needing care she couldn't provide. I told her so. I'm not ashamed of it, though I could have said it kinder. I stood in her kitchen the second night while Priya slept in her truck outside because she wouldn't leave the animals, and I said, Della, you have got to call somebody. You cannot keep them. You cannot feed them. You cannot even feed your cows. You are going to lose this place in a month, and now you want to lose it 30 days faster feeding leaves to zoo animals. This isn't a fairy tale. This is going to hurt you. And she was quiet a long time. She had a chipped mug of coffee in front of her going cold. She never finished a coffee the whole time I knew her, always let them go cold and made a fresh one, some little grief habit she'd picked up after Marcus. I always thought, and she turned the mug in slow circles on the table. Marcus left, she said finally. You know what hurt worst? It wasn't him going. By then I wanted him gone. It was the note. 4 words, like I wasn't even worth a real goodbye, like I was a thing you don't bother explaining yourself to. She looked up at me. Somebody put those three in a truck to die, Cal, loaded 'em up like garbage, didn't even hate 'em, just didn't think they were worth the trouble. Her voice cracked and she let it. And they walked 3 days across the desert anyway. Because something in them wouldn't quit, and they ended up here in my yard, out of the whole entire empty world. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand, angry at her own tears the way she was angry at everything that showed weakness. You want me to load 'em back up, send 'em off to be somebody's problem and probably to die because it's the smart thing. She shook her head slow. I've been the smart thing to get rid of Cal. I'm not doing it to somebody else, not even a giraffe. I'd rather lose the whole place standing next to them than keep it by shipping them off. I didn't have an answer for that. I still don't, not a clean one. Because she was wrong, it was going to hurt her. It did hurt her. Keeping them was in every practical sense the wrong call. And she was also more right than any practical person I ever met. Right in the place underneath practicality where a person decides what kind of soul they're going to have. And I have thought about it every day since, whether the wrong call made for the right reason is a wrong call at all. I went home that night and I couldn't sleep, and it wasn't my hip. The next morning I brought over every leafy thing I could cut off my own place, which wasn't much, and I found Priya and Della had already been up for hours rigging a browse rack out of an old hay feeder, and I found something else too. I found that I'd already decided. Somewhere between my kitchen and hers, I'd crossed over from the man telling her to be sensible to the man dragging a trailer load of cottonwood cuttings up her drive, and I never did decide it consciously. It just happened, the way the important things do. Priya knew the animals. That saved us in the first days. She knew Gulliver, the old bull, was gentle as an afternoon despite his size, and that his lameness was old arthritis that a warm shelter and the right footing would ease more than cure. She knew Juno, the cow, would never let a person close and shouldn't be pushed to, and that the way you earned a scared giraffe wasn't by approaching but by being present and boring and safe until she decided you weren't a threat. A lesson, I noticed, that Della seemed to already know in her body, some sympathy between the wary woman and the wary animal that neither of them ever put into words. And she knew the calf, a little female. They'd never named her at the park, just numbered her, and Della named her Sunday because that was the day she'd walked up out of the dark. The calf was the sick one, the one with the murmur, and the one most likely to break all our hearts. Money, I have to talk about the money because it was the whole crushing weight of it, and I won't pretend love fixed it. Love doesn't buy alfalfa. The first 2 weeks nearly finished Della. She sold 4 of her 11 cattle to buy specialty feed and lumber, which meant her actual operation, the thing that was supposed to save the ranch, got smaller to feed animals that could never earn a dime. From the outside, it looked like a woman lighting her own house on fire. Doc Ferris, our large animal vet, came out as a favor and stood looking up at Gulliver for a long minute and said, "Della, I don't even know what I'm looking at. I treat cows." But he stayed 4 hours and he didn't charge her, and I saw something move in his face too, the same thing that had moved in mine, the thing these animals did to people just by existing where they had no right to exist. Because, and here's what I couldn't have told you at the start, they were magnificent. Not in a postcard way. In a way that got into you. To stand in a desert dawn and watch a giraffe reach up into the cottonwoods, the impossible architecture of that neck, the delicacy of a mouth the size of your 2 hands stripping leaves one careful branch at a time, it rearranged something in your chest. It made the smallness of your own troubles feel both smaller and somehow more bearable, like the world was bigger and stranger than your foreclosure notice, and had room in it for more than your defeat. The word got out, of course. You can't hide 3 giraffes, and the world did what the world does. It came to gawk. Cars started slowing on the county road, then stopping, then a fellow from the paper. Then, God help us, the internet, because Priya, who was smarter than all of us, had started posting little videos of them, of Sunday learning to trust a hand, of Gulliver's slow morning walk, of Della in her worn-through work coat standing under Juno with her palm flat and open, and her face turned up and patient, waiting to be trusted. I thought the attention would be a circus and a curse. Some of it was, but I was wrong about the shape of it, wrong the way I was wrong about the animals themselves, and I'm going to leave you here for now, right at the edge of it turning, right before the day the first letter came, and the day the man from the Hutchins outfit drove up Della's road with a smile and a checkbook, and an offer that would have solved everything and cost her the only thing she had left worth keeping. Because that's the day it stopped being a story about surviving and started being a story about what you're willing to survive for. The Hutchins man's name was Gary Pell, and he drove a truck that had never once been dirty on the inside. I was there the day he came, mid-October now. The cold snap Priya had feared already threatening on the northern horizon in that hard bright way the sky gets before it hurts you. I was there because I was there most days by then. I'd stopped pretending my place needed me more than Della's did. And I was up on a ladder wiring insulation board into the old barn we'd converted for the animals when Pell's truck came up the drive, and I felt Della go still beside me the way prey goes still. She knew what he was before he said a word. We both did. The Hutchins outfit had wanted her water rights for a decade, and they'd have taken the whole spread and been glad, and every rancher in the valley knew that if the bank foreclosed, Hutchins would be first in line at the auction with money the rest of us couldn't dream of matching. Gary Pell getting out of that clean truck with his hand already extended was the sound of the wolf finally deciding to knock on the door instead of circling. "Ms. Ruiz," he said, "quite the operation you've got here." He was looking up at Gulliver, who had ambled over to the fence to inspect him, the way Gulliver inspected everyone, with that gentle, stupid curiosity that made you love him. "Saw you folks on the news, whole states talking about it." "Mr. Pell," Della said, nothing else. She'd learned, somewhere in 4 years of getting robbed and abandoned and foreclosed on, the power of not filling a silence. He made his pitch. "I'll spare you the length of it because it went the way those things always go, all warmth and reasonableness, a man doing you a tremendous favor. The number was good. I'll be honest, the number was very good. Hutchins would buy the spread outright today before the auction, for more than the land was worth, enough to clear the bank and the debt and leave Della with a real cushion, enough to start over somewhere, anywhere. And this was the hook, this was the thing Pell had clearly come armed with, having seen the news like everybody else. Hutchins would keep the Giraffes, build them a proper facility, make it an attraction. Wonderful publicity, Pell said. Wonderful for the whole county, and your animals cared for professionally for the rest of their lives. Everybody wins, Ms. Ruiz, you most of all. It was, I want you to understand, a genuinely good offer. It solved every single problem Della had. It saved her from ruin. It saved the animals from her inability to care for them long-term through a desert winter she had no real way to survive. A sane, responsible, loving person would have taken it and wept with relief. There was no trick in it that I could find. It was just the smart thing. The smart thing had come to save her at last in a clean truck. Della was quiet for a long time. She looked at Gulliver. She looked over at the far paddock where Juno stood watching us with her ears going, never still, and where Sunday pressed against her mother's leg. She looked at Pell. "You'd make them an attraction," she said. "A beloved one," said Pell. "People paying to look at them." She said it slow, feeling the shape of it. "Behind a good fence, fed on schedule, professionally handled. Best care in the state, I'd stake my name on it." And Della nodded, like she was agreeing, and I felt my heart sink because I honestly thought she was going to take it, and I thought she should. And I hated that I thought she should, and all of that was happening in me at once when she said, "That's what they came from, Mr. Pell." He blinked. "A place where people paid to look at them," she said. "Behind a good fence, handled by professionals who fed them on schedule and decided one day when the money got tight that the old one and the scared one and the sick one weren't worth the cost, and loaded them on a truck to go die." Her voice didn't rise. That was the terrible power of it, it didn't rise at all. "That's not a life you're offering them. That's the exact life that already threw them away. You're just promising to be nicer about it right up until you're not." Pell started to say something about how Hutchins was different, more stable, and Della held up one hand, not rude, just done. "I know you take good care of them," she said, and I believe she meant it. "I know I probably can't. I know exactly what I'm saying no to." She looked at me for a second, 1 second, and I have never in my life felt so seen and so helpless. But those three walked 3 days across a desert to get out of a place like that, and I'm not going to be the one who drives them back in. Not for any number, not to save myself. She turned back to Pell. "Thank you for coming. The answer's no." He left his card on the fence post. She didn't touch it. After his clean truck had gone back down the drive and out of sight, Della sat down right there in the cold dirt with her back against the fence, and Gulliver lowered that great impossible head down and down until his nose was near her shoulder, and she put her face in her hands, and for a while nobody said anything at all. I sat down next to her in the dirt, my bad hip be damned. "That was either the bravest thing I ever saw," I said, "or the dumbest." "Both," she said into her hands. "It's both, Cal. That's the thing nobody tells you. It's always both." The cold came 4 days later, and it was as bad as we'd feared, and Sunday nearly died. I won't stretch it out. The little one, the sick one, the one with the bad heart, the cold got into her chest, and she went down in the barn on the worst night of it. And for 6 hours Della and Priya and I and Doc Ferris, who drove out at 2 in the morning through freezing rain and would not take a dime, fought for that animal's life on the straw with heat lamps and blankets and Doc's whole large animal kit, and a desperate improvised prayer none of us would have admitted to in daylight. Juno stood over us the whole time, the unmanageable one, the one who wouldn't let a person close. She stood over her daughter and let us work under her. Let all these hands she didn't trust move around her sick child and did not kick, did not run, just stood, trembling, and once, I saw this, I will swear to it. Once she lowered her head and touched Della's hair with her nose, the woman she'd never let near her in the middle of that terrible night. Like she understood exactly who in that barn knew what it was to fight for something the world had already given up on. Sunday lived. I'm not going to lie and say it was certain or that it was clean. It was neither. But somewhere near dawn her breathing eased and her eyes cleared and she got her legs under her, wobbling, and reached for her mother, and Doc Ferris sat back on his heels in the bloody straw with tears frozen on his face and said, "Well, I'll be damned. I treat cows." Della didn't cry. She'd used it all up by then. She just laughed, this exhausted, broken, beautiful laugh, and she said, "You hear that, baby? Doc's gonna have to learn a whole new animal on your account." That was the night I understood I'd never leave. Not the valley, not her. Some things you don't decide. Now the part I said I couldn't talk about without stopping to breathe. I'll try. The auction was 11 days away and no amount of stubbornness had changed the math. Della had said no to Hutchins and she'd meant it, but no is not a check, and the bank does not accept magnificence as legal tender. We were going to lose the place. All of us knew it. We'd stopped saying it out loud, but we knew it, and there was a heaviness on that ranch in those last days that even the animals seemed to feel. Gulliver quieter, Juno more watchful, the whole place holding its breath. And Priya's videos had been climbing the whole time. I didn't understand it then. I'm an old man. I still don't fully understand it, but somewhere out in the wide world, the story of the 3 rejected giraffes who walked out of the desert to a broke woman who wouldn't give them up had gotten into people. Millions of people. People I'd never meet in places I'd never see. The rejects and the woman who wouldn't reject them. Something in it spoke to something in them, the same way it had spoken to me and to Doc and to everybody who ever stood in that yard. Priya set up a fund. She didn't tell Della would have said no. She said no to everything that felt like charity. It was the same pride that had kept her from selling to me years back. Priya set it up quiet and she pointed it at the debt and the auction and the winter feed, and then she posted one more video. Just Della. Standing in the cold under Gulliver at dawn, not knowing she was filmed, her hand up and open and Gulliver's great head coming down to meet it, and over the top of it Priya put the 4 words. The 4 words Marcus left on the kitchen table. "I'm not this person." And then underneath, she wasn't. She was this one. and a link. I was there the morning Della found out. Priya couldn't hold it back anymore. The auction was 6 days off, and she came into the kitchen with her laptop and her hands shaking, and she turned it around and showed Della the number. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was the debt and the winter and Doc's feed, and the fencing and a real vet fund for Sunday's heart and a cushion under all of it, sent $5 and $10 and $20 at a time by 300,000 strangers who had decided, each one of them, that these three animals nobody wanted, and this one woman who wanted them anyway, were worth the cost. Della didn't speak. She sat down at the table, at the same table where 4 words had once told her she wasn't worth a real goodbye, and she looked at that screen full of strangers who had crossed the whole distance of the world to tell her the opposite, and her chipped coffee went cold in front of her one last time, and she put both her hands flat on the table like she needed to feel something solid, and she didn't say anything for a long, long time. They're still there, all of them. That was 3 years ago now. Sunday's grown, or mostly. She'll always be a little small, her heart will always need watching, but she runs the back paddock at dusk with a joy that would break you open to see. Gulliver's slower every winter, but he made it through 3 now with his warm barn and his good footing, and every morning that old lame bull walks his slow patrol of the fence line like he's making sure the world's still where he left it. Juno lets me touch her now. Only me and Della, and only sometimes and always on her terms, but she lets us, the unmanageable one, and I count it among the honors of my life. Della didn't just save the ranch. She turned it into the thing Marcus only ever talked about except real, because she built it in the middle and not the beginning. It's a sanctuary now, for exactly the kind of animals these 3 were, the old ones, the scared ones, the sick ones, the ones the accredited places won't take because they're not good investments, the rejects. There's 14 animals out there now that nobody else in the world would pay to keep, and every one of them is alive because a broke woman 31 days from zero decided she'd rather go down standing next to them than save herself by shipping them off. I married her last spring, if you want to know, at our age, in the yard under the cottonwoods, with Gulliver leaning his fool head over the fence into the middle of it like he was giving her away. I never did tell her what she'd become to me over those weeks and months and years. Never found the words, but I think she knows. Some things you don't have to say. People ask me when they come to visit, and they come from everywhere now, they ask what the lesson is. Like it's a fable. Like there's a moral you can carry off in your pocket. I never know what to tell them, because the honest truth is that Della made every wrong choice. Every practical, sensible, ledger-balancing calculation said get rid of the animals, take the Hutchins money, be smart, save yourself. And she said no every single time, and by every rule I've ranched by for 41 years, she should have lost everything for it. But there's a math underneath the math. I know that now. There's an accounting that doesn't show up in any ledger, where the value of a thing is exactly and only what someone is willing to lose to keep it. And by that accounting, the only one that finally matters, 3 giraffes that the whole world had marked down as a loss already taken turned out to be worth more than a ranch, more than a fortune, more than being smart. They were worth everything. She proved it. She proved it by being willing to lose everything, and that's the only way that particular thing can ever be proved. I still get up at 3 most mornings. The hip. I stand on our porch, it's our porch now, and I look east across the yard where I first saw those impossible shapes come rolling up out of the dark, and some mornings, if the light's right and the cottonwoods are still, I swear I can feel how close the whole thing came to going the other way. How near she came to being sensible. How near they came to dying in a desert nobody would have searched. And then I hear Gulliver start his slow morning walk along the fence, that old lame patient patrol, checking that the world's still where he left it. It is, old man, it is. She made sure of it,